Today, I want to speak about something that most people have never heard in their entire life. You heard me. One essential thing that you need for life, but you have never heard it before. I'm Dr. Greg Baldeo, and welcome to my channel. And I want you to like, subscribe, and share as we grow together. You weren't taught this one skill that you need the most. The skill that makes every part of your life make sense. You weren't taught it in school, definitely not at church. I don't think at your job. You didn't get a degree in it. Nobody taught you this. And the truth is, you've been trying to live and to grow and to succeed and to lead without the very skill that life requires. That's why you feel the way you do. You feel unmotivated, and though you may have the right degrees and you may be struggling to make ends meet, no matter what spectrum you are in life, this very one skill is needed for you to actually grow. This episode is not about motivation or how to get your personal growth going. It is about you and that one skill nobody taught you. This is about the one skill you have never been taught, but you should have been taught from the beginning. It is strategy. Not the business version of strategy, but the human version. In this episode, we're going to be looking at that one skill that you need, strategy. In episode one, we talked about your life, how it feels off, why things are not lining up as you expect, and why you're trying your best, but you're not moving from one area to the next. Now I want to show you something much deeper. People think that they need more discipline. People think that they need more motivation. And you may even think that you need more time. But really, you don't. What you need is strategy. Because strategy is a life skill. Think about this. The World Economic Forum lists strategic thinking as one of the top five skills required for the future workforce. Yet almost every adult alive today have never learned it. And here is the reality of it all. People are struggling, not because they are lacking potential, and not because they don't have ambition, but because they are lacking the skill that helps everything else work. When I say life skill, I'm not talking about your talents or your hobbies. Life skills are the abilities that you have garnered to help you function. They help you make progress. And they help you to navigate and make sense of the world with confidence and assurance. Like reading. Reading is a life skill. Writing is a life skill. Communication is a life skill. Emotional intelligence is a life skill. Financial literacy is a life skill. But there's a life skill that sits above all of that. It sits above reading, writing, communication, financial literacy, because it shapes how you deal with all of those life skills. It shapes how you respond to them and how you navigate them. And that skill is strategy. You heard me correctly. You can communicate well, but without strategy, you have misalignment. You can manage your emotions, but without strategy, you have confusion. And yes, you can learn how to manage your money, but without strategy, you will always be in debt. You can have goals, several goals, but without strategy, you will not have accomplishment. Strategy is a skill that organizes all the other skills. And most people think strategy is just for executives and boardrooms and leaders and big organizations. Strategy is not for me. Well, that's where you're wrong. Because in real life, everyday people need strategy more than the CEO in Fortune 500s. CEOs, they have an entire system. But everyday people, they're just managing. They're managing work, they're managing relationships, they're managing finances, they're managing health, they're managing how to parent, they're managing aging parents, they're managing personal goals and emotional pressures and expectations. You're managing your identity. And guess what? We're doing all of this all alone, without any training, without tools, without support, and worst of all, without strategy. So, of course, life feels heavy, it feels burdensome, it feels pressuring. And most of us are really tired because we're progressing and doing, but we're not advancing the way that we want to. You're managing an entire organization. Your life. Your life is an entire organization with none of the tools that a CEO has in an organization. Strategy is not just for executives. Executive win because they have strategy. Everyone else keep grinding and losing because we don't. Let's look at the neuroscience of this. Your brain constantly tries to organize your world. It looks for patterns, it looks for meaning, and it looks for direction. But when the brain doesn't have direction, it falls into survival mode. This is why you overthink things. This is why you second guess yourself. This is why you avoid decisions. This is why you feel overwhelmed and start things, but you don't finish them. You make emotional choices. You take on too much. You say yes to everything. You repeat old patterns. You lose focus quickly and you feel stuck in cycles. See that? All of that just coming in and just feels pressuring. Nothing is wrong with you. Your brain is just trying to operate without a system. Strategic thinking activates the prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain is responsible for planning, clarity, problem solving, and decision making. Without strategy, your prefrontal cortex is underused and your survival part of your brain is overused. That is why life feels like a constant emergency. That is why your life feels so pressured because you have not learned how to put your life in a strategic framework, how to make strategy a life skill. Let's look at a few scenarios. The working adult who is juggling everything. How does that look? Without strategy, every task feels urgent. Every request gets a yes. Every interruption pulls on you and pulls you apart. Every day feels reactive and pressuring. And you just feel like you're just constantly going and it's just really hard. But with strategy, strategy realigns that exact same day. You know what matters. You know what can wait. You stop overcommitting and saying yes to everything. You move in a way that prioritizes your vision. You remove unnecessary pressure and you gain clarity and calm. That's what strategy does for the working adult. But what about the leader who is always busy but never ahead, always going but never feeling as if they're accomplishing what they need to accomplish and they're growing in their role? Without strategy, meetings control this leader's life. Without strategy, they are confused with motion, yet not progressing. Without strategy, they solve surface problems, always running around, putting out different fires. Without strategy, this leader is always drained. But strategy, as a life skill for this leader, you delegate correctly. With strategy for this leader, you redesign how you work. You focus on outcomes and not just activities. And you lead from a place of clarity. That's what strategy does when this leader makes strategy a life skill. What about the person who is trying to find themselves? This is what they look like without strategy. Every idea looks appealing. And so they are moving in several different directions. You ever meet some people and they're going here, there, and everywhere? Because they're grasping, they're trying to accomplish without strategy. Every option looks possible to them. Every opportunity is urgent. And they jump around and soon they burn out. But this very person, if they make strategy a life skill, they choose the direction that they're going. They filter their decisions. They stop drifting at every wind that comes, and their path becomes much clearer. That's what strategy as a life skill does. And let's say you're within your family or you're a couple struggling with communication. Without strategy, what that looks like is that every conversation is a burden. Every conversation just becomes emotionally draining. You address symptoms, but you don't look at the structure and the root cause. You repeat the same argument over and over. I met a couple once and they said to me, listen, we're having this problem. As I spoke with them, they weren't having a communication problem. They weren't having a normal marital problem. They were having a strategic problem. And so as I invited them to take strategy as a life skill, what that looked like is that they now started organizing their expectations. They communicated their priorities and set boundaries around those priorities. They design how their relationship should look, will look, and they work toward that. They replace pressure with peace, and their home became rather an haven because they applied strategic thinking and strategy as a life skill. Strategy, my friends, isn't just for business practice. It's a human advantage. When you have strategy and you work strategy as a life skill, you stop reacting to everything. You start choosing what you do. You stop guessing and you start designing how your life will be. You start directing your path and you stop feeling overwhelmed. You start feeling grounded and you start moving with energy and you become more focused. Your decisions become aligned, your direction becomes clear, and your life becomes intentional. You don't just rise to the level of your dreams, you rise to the level of your strategy. Strategy is a life skill that you must have. And the sooner you adopt strategy as a life skill, just like reading or writing or communicating or financial literacy, is the better your life will be organized. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to point you to episode 3. Episode 3, we're going to talk about why is it that you should listen to me talk about strategy. Why you should listen to me talk about why strategy should be a life skill. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share with you my story, my scars, my journey, and how strategy rebuilt my life from the ground up. If this helped you understand strategy as a life skill, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and send it to someone who's struggling and needs clarity today. I'm Dr. Greg Baldeo, reminding you that strategy is a life skill that helps you to win.